Hi everyone, and welcome to this Wide Days panel. As Olaf said, we're going to be exploring new opportunities in media, and it's a real honour to be a part of Wide Days this year. It's a great event, and it's so great that it's been able to go ahead. So just to say a massive congrats to the team for all their hard work in putting this together. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Arusa, and I'm an arts and culture journalist based in Edinburgh, and I'm the editor of The List. And over the next hour, we're going to be joined by a wonderful selection of panelists. And we're going to be looking at things like, how the mass cancellation of events have affected publications, and looking at fresh approaches and new opportunities for artists. And as Olaf said earlier, how the industry can help writers and publications too. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our lovely panel. And I'm going to start with Rachel Grace-Almeida. Rachel is a Venezuelan-American freelance writer, radio producer, and the deputy editor of Crack magazine. Next, we've got Fiona Shepherd, and Fiona is an established music journalist based in Glasgow and the chief rock and pop critic of the Scotsman. She's also the co-founder and co-director of Glasgow Music City Tours and Edinburgh Music Tours. And Duan Stokes is publishing director with Hotpress and operations director of Hotpress.com, having been the first man drafted in when Hotpress needed an extra set of hands through the formative years. Next, we've got Dresden Leitner, who is a culture communication specialist, currently working freelance around the world, having successfully launched music, technology, and culture projects in Mexico, Colombia, and more. And finally, we've got Kitty Lester, who is the director of creative communications agency and consultancy Childhood, working with festivals, events, brands, and culture. And current clients include artists such as Jungle and music festivals, including Melt in Germany and Oya in Oslo. So welcome, lovely panelists. And just a reminder to everyone listening that following the panel, guests can move into the virtual room to meet the speakers and ask questions. So do keep note of anything that you want to speak to us about. So I think it's safe to say that the events of the past few months have really shifted the media and the music landscape in such profound ways, and we're now looking ahead to an industry that is vastly different, for better or worse. So I guess I wanted to start by asking the panel more generally how you and your publications, platforms, projects, etc., have responded to the mass cancellation of events, when you started to consider how to respond, and what your initial priorities were. So if we maybe start with Rachel.
Hi. So we are obviously a print magazine that has had to cease printing for the time being due to the pandemic. And we decided to kind of transport the print magazine onto its own digital platform, keeping the essence of Crack magazine, the print magazine, and having a different portal to our main website. Our priority was to make sure that the website, the portal for the new digital edition, felt like the print magazine, because that's what we're known for and that's what our readership is so loyal to. So our priorities were making sure that everything we put out still felt like the physical copy of Crack without being the physical copy.
Great, thanks, Rachel. And we'll go to Fiona next.
Well, the Scotsman, obviously, print newspaper and online. Very quickly, we were heavily punting digital subscriptions because we were pretty certain that well, we thought print sales would kind of possibly fall off a cliff. They weren't as badly impacted as all that, because it's a newspaper and people wanted hard copy, if you like. But in terms of the arts coverage, that obviously, with no live stuff to review, my arts editor Roger Cox realised very quickly that we needed to come up with an alternative to not even so much to fill that space, but to almost to preserve that live reviews budget, obviously in the hopes that live events were going to come back at some point in the future. So when you get rid of a budget, then often that's it gone. And so Roger came up with the idea of the Scotsman sessions, which I can talk more about later, which would be a way to create interesting online content that would appeal to people online. And there would still be a print version of it, but it was mainly about trying to find a way to cover musicians without actually without them actually having a gig. So it was a kind of lockdown sessions kind of idea, and I can talk more about that later on. We realised very quickly that had to happen. So actually, we had our first Scotsman sessions online before we actually did lockdown in the UK.
Thanks so much, Fiona. And we'll come to Duan next.
Yeah, well, Hotpress has been going since 1977, so this wasn't the first shock we had to deal with. But obviously, I think the speed of it that it happened was incredible. And we've always had it left us with two options. One was putting everything sort of in a deep freeze and hope to come out the other side. And then the other was sort of keep on keeping on. And that's always been kind of the Hotpress mantra. So, you know, we felt it was important to find a way of doing things within the lockdown framework that would work for us as a publication, and also then as the artists and musicians that we try and cover, and the cultural people that we try and deal with on an ongoing basis. So, I mean, like the Scotsman, we straight away went into did a sessions format. And we've been doing them since March the 18th was the first one. And we've done over 100 so far. We took more than this. But the other thing we did was we using this period as an opportunity to test things out, to try things, to not be afraid to experiment with items within the print product, but also with stuff in the digital space. So on one level, it's been extremely challenging. Obviously, you mentioned about revenues. Advertising revenues have collapsed hugely. But the other thing is it's been extremely liberating, because you can do stuff and the chance for upside is great.
Thanks, Duan. That's great. And Dresden, will come to you next.
Cool. Yeah. So I think in terms of the kind of clients that I work with, so they're normally around like 80% live events. So I've been hit pretty hard by this kind of thing. I think kind of as all the madness kind of unraveled around like January, February time, and we started realizing that probably a lot of events were going to be cancelled. I think the first initial thing that I had to deal with was a lot of crisis communications and sort of planning and consultation for clients who had events planned, and potentially having their livelihood on the line for this year. So a big thing that a big responsibility of mine was working with the clients. So like I had a couple of festivals, pop-ups, live stream series, conference, all having to like work out different voices for those and how they were going to react to the pandemic, and also how to keep, if they were going to go ahead and cancel or take a different form, how are we going to shape that, and how are we going to keep their brands relevant and in the minds of their usual users, and trying to keep things moving whilst all this is happening, rather than just like closing down doors and saying like we're shut for business now until all this is over, because obviously that's just a bit of a like impossible stance to take. So yeah, it's been a crazy time, but it's actually been quite refreshing. I think a lot of clients, artists, and people within the industry have kind of been given this like rare gift of time. So normally when everyone's like so busy and so like straight down the line and like this is exactly what I have to do, dun, now actually people have had a chance to like maybe take a bit of a step back and think more about like new innovative ways to promote themselves, new technologies they could be embracing, thinking about different, like, you know, for example, like you guys have said, like sessions that they could be doing, live streams, all that kind of stuff. So whilst it's been really difficult, I also think it's been like a really kind of like exciting and like innovative time for the industry as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Thanks, Dresden. And Kitty, will come to you last.
Yeah, so similarly to Dresden, I work with a number of international festivals, and yeah, had to go through the kind of same process. I think the timing was quite important, of knowing when was the right time to, you know, pull the plug, at the risk of sounding brutal, but and knowing when the best time within that would be to announce as well, given, you know, what was going on in the news cycle and the fact that there was arguably, you know, more important things going on. I actually work with YouTube Music, so we experienced a huge spike in artists kind of moving from, I guess, their more kind of traditional PR campaigns to setting up different ideas and activations to do on that platform, which I'm sure we'll come on to in more detail. But yeah, I mean, I think to echo what people have been saying, it was about suddenly, being faced with a whole new landscape and having to kind of navigate around different areas of the media that no longer exist or were on hiatus. And then on the flip side, the new opportunities that arose, be it, I don't know, Evening Standard now reviewing live streams as opposed to live gigs, or, an entirely new kind of format.
Thanks, Kitty. And yeah, I think I totally would echo what all of you are saying, that it has been such a horrible and challenging time, but it is great to see so many new and exciting opportunities as well. So with that in mind, I just wanted to go to Fiona, and I wanted to ask you a bit more about the Scotsman sessions. And I wanted to find out what the response has been like generally, and also if you see this as something that might continue in the future.
Well, the response has been fantastic. I guess I better explain what it actually involves. It's not a concert. What we do is we approach artists. Now, it's artists across the artistic spectrum. So we have actors, poets, we have comedians, dancers, but the majority of the Scotsman sessions are musicians from all sort of genres of music. They're all either Scottish musicians or musicians based in Scotland, and we just approach different artists, ask them would they be prepared to record an exclusive song, an exclusive performance for the Scotsman. And of course, initially when we were in lockdown, this would be something that they would do in their house or in their garden. And I think the idea was almost to get a kind of window on the kind of the geographical kind of spread of artistry around the country. So we would be trying to, for example, the very first artist I approached was Pictish Trail, Johnny Lynch, who runs Lost Map Records from the island of Egg. So Johnny very quickly just filmed on his phone a performance of him doing a song with at the Bothy, where a lot of artists come to the island to record, with the sea crashing onto the cliffs in the background. And then we combine that with an intro from the writer. So the idea is that the money that would normally go into for the live reviews budget is split evenly between the writer who writes the intro to the piece and the artist who's presented us with the recording. We do 4 a week. They go online first, and it was a very blatant way to try and create online traffic, and it absolutely has succeeded in doing that. So we're now on to we're in the 70s at the moment. I know Duan said they've done 100 in Hotpress. We're working towards 100 and hopefully beyond. I guess the idea is that when live events resume, we will go back to reviewing live events, but that is still so up in the air at the moment that I think for the foreseeable future, the Scotsman sessions will continue. And there's been, as I say, there's been a great response from, it's been pretty much universally positive. Sometimes artists get in touch to say they'd like to be part of the Scotsman sessions, or PRs get in touch. And we've got a massive long wish list of people we would love to invite, and we're just working our way through that. And most people we ask are interested in taking part for various reasons. Not every artist can. I think perhaps some of the more successful artists maybe don't need it, and it's just a small fee that they get anyway, so it's really kind of almost like pocket money. But it's really, I still think it's important to pay artists for this, and some of them have done really creative films. The original idea was just to have it something quite lo-fi, something that you could just film on your phone, so just a really immediate connection with your audience. And I love those films. One of my favourites, I think, was Justin Curry of Delamitri, who hadn't even bothered to tidy up or change his shirt, and his cat was lying in the background licking its private parts and looking quite bored. But he did a brilliant performance of the Delamitri track "Tell Her This." But we've had So we've had performances like that, but we've had some people do some quite creative things with their films. C. Duncan, who is known for layering up harmonies and instrumentation. You know, he's a kind of solo artist, but he almost sounds like a kind of choir of C. Duncans. So of course, when he did his film, he did the same thing. He did some layering up of sound and a vision for us. So yes, it's been a great thing to be part of. And as I say, it continues and hopefully will continue for quite some time.
Thanks, Fiona. And I'm a big fan of the Scotsman sessions. I've really, really enjoyed them. And I think I've enjoyed them mostly because it's kind of like an archive of Scottish, not just Scottish music, but Scottish arts that, you know, in 10 years' time, we can look back and we have this amazing collection. You know, it's been really wonderful. And also, as you were saying, the fact that the artists and the writers are paid for their time is, you know, that's really great. So yeah, big up the Scotsman for sure. Next, I want to move on to June, and I want to ask you similarly about the Hotpress lockdown sessions. And I wanted to find out if you've had a similarly positive response, and if you could kind of tell me more about how they came about.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it happened very, as I said, very, very quickly. As we went into lockdown, we had a meeting where everyone's pressed up against the wall of the meeting room, so we all stayed 2 meters apart. And the first thing that somebody said is, well, we need to do live sessions every night. And we went at it from March the 18th, and it's 7:30 every night on the Hotpress Instagram channel. And we started that as a vehicle for people to get an outlet for people to do things. And in the early days of lockdown, it had to be by default, it had to be lo-fi, it had to be able to be done with the phone, because nobody was allowed in anyone else's house. Nobody was allowed to travel more than 2 kilometers from their home. And that created a real intimacy in it, and a real sense that you were let into people's lives, which on an artistic way was really, really creative and gentle for people. And then as it kept going, the response has been absolutely phenomenal. And we were able then, for the last 37 or so of them, we've had the Department of Culture, Heritage and the Gaeltacht involved, which means that we've been given government support to pay the artists a decent fee for their 25-minute session. And that means that you're talking, and that was based around the idea of young and emerging. And it was our job to pick out people who normally would be making their sort of first forays into headline shows or in smaller venues, or first sort of single releases, and were denied the capacity to do that by the situation. So they've been able to do that through the young and emerging sessions on Hotpress Instagram, and it's been fantastic. And one of the amazing things is, I mean, we have been able to cover ground that you simply would not have been able to cover. And then for the artists who've been involved with it, they've been able to push boundaries that they wouldn't. We had a fantastic MC from Galway, Céline de Mai, and she literally took us through, it was like, you know, a half-hour dream vision that she took us through, all by just using a phone and clever filters and stuff like that. And so some of the creativity that's been involved has been fantastic. And then some have been just straightforward, beautiful, one man or woman and their guitar, intimate sessions where you see their part of their life. We have a wonderful girl, Seamat, who had a pajama party in her bedroom for hers. And again, you know, you get that kind of connection with people and that kind of inside their lives that often we have struggled to get over the years, because the sort of natural framework that's put around performance means that people are that bit removed from the audience.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And actually, I wanted to ask you as well about Hotpress's double cover special issue. Can you tell me a bit more of that?
Yeah,
really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a few. Like, one of the things that we did do is, because we had no festivals, no live events, no what's on, no nothing to cover in that, we did reduce the frequency of Hotpress. We were traditionally a fortnightly publication. We decided, okay, for this period, we are going to become a monthly publication, because it suits what we were going to try and do, which is do more long form pieces, more things like that. But that meant that we had less covers to devote to people who we felt deserved them. So it meant that we came up with a couple of creative ways to do it, which was that we were able to do split runs on covers. So half the cover be one artist, half the cover another. We've done it twice now. We did it with the 1975 and Jerry Cinnamon in May, and then our current cover right at the moment is Fontaine's DC and the Coronas, and that's split in the same way. And it's something that's gone well in terms of creates a sense of occasion around the cover. We always want our magazines to feel like events. We feel it's important, and creates a bit of a healthy sense of rivalry between bands and artists. Who can get the most pre-orders in is always a barometer that we like to tell them is good to chase. And it's about knowing now that we have the flexibility to try things, and using the fact that we've created that space to be able to do them.
Yeah, no, totally. And yeah, like I said, I love the idea, and I think it's a really interesting cover and double cover special, the recent one. I'm just going to move on to Rachel now to ask about a bit more about the digital edition of the magazine that's currently on the site. It's wonderful, and I was wondering how you had to approach things differently to create that digital issue, and also whether you think that the print version will return soon. If you have any thoughts about that.
So in terms of the print edition, it's not likely that will return for the rest of the year, just because we're a free publication. We distributed across all of the major cities in the UK, in Berlin, in Amsterdam, a few other key cities in Holland, and also we launched in New York in 2019. So we just thought it's better to stop production for the rest of the year, because of like the duress we've been under. All our advertisers kind of evaporated overnight, like most publications, and also because, just for safety measures, since we distribute for free, we kind of have magazines everywhere, and at the moment that's just not realistic for public safety and health right now. With the digital magazine, so one of the biggest changes that we've endured or kind of like gone through has definitely been the flexibility that we now have to do editorial. We're not so bound by print deadlines, which is sometimes a relief. But we've been able to be just way more creative in the kind of output, the content that we put out. We had our first split covers this issue, in the May issue, and where we had 4 artists. We had Baby Keem, Tomás El Real, Ali XL, and Biba Doobie, and that was a big first for us. We also, obviously, because we can't shoot in real life, which is something that we usually do and something that we kind of take very seriously, like Crack's visual identity, we did 3D renders for the first time, working with a 3D studio in Berlin, which was something new for us. It was very rewarding, but also very challenging to do, despite it all being kind of remote and online. We've also, for our last cover with 100 gecs, we got a clay animator to design the cover based on photos of the artists, which is something we wouldn't really be able to do in print. So yeah, we've kind of had to adapt creatively in a lot of different ways. Another thing that's quite significant for me as an editor is now we're not so bound by physical pages. So we can kind of explore stories and editorial a bit more in depth, which has been really nice.
Yeah, it sounds like you're doing really cool things, and you've really taken advantage of all the wonderful kind of new ways that you could get creative, which is like, yeah, lovely to hear. I also wondered if you could just tell us a bit more about Crack Magazine supporters, and how we can all support Crack in the future as well.
So at the moment we have our supporter scheme, and there's 2 tiers to it. So people can sign up to support for a small fee every month, and you get the digital issue delivered to you exclusively online through a portal where you get logins. And there's also a few other extras that come with that, like some exclusive mixes from DJs and stuff like that. And then we have the yearly supporter scheme, which is where you also get the magazine delivered to you every month. And you also get a lot of perks like free prints, with artists that we've featured in the past and collaborated with the past, like Aphex Twin and Tom York and Burna Boy, and basically a lot of our cover stars. You also get exclusive mixes and some discount codes from some companies that we've managed to partner with. So a few record labels, kind of music equipment companies and stuff like that. So that's those are the perks of kind of signing up for a year. And obviously we had a really good response, which is kind of what's kept us afloat in this time. So we're very grateful.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And yeah, everyone support crack. I mean, look at all those perks sound great. Okay, I'm going to come to Dresden and Kitty next. And obviously we've talked a lot about some of the great new opportunities that have come up in terms of coverage and how, you know, magazines have been getting really creative. And I wonder, in terms of the people that you work with, have you found that people have mostly embraced innovation, or do you think have there been some people that have been a bit nervous about pivoting to online and virtual stuff? I'll start with Dresden, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So I think I've had a bit of a mix. Like, I would probably say most of my clients have been like, right, okay, this is the situation. How are we going to deal with it? How are we going to embrace it and kind of make the most of what we have here? So yeah, I think yeah, pretty much the majority of my clients have been, as soon as we kind of knew the reality of the situation, were immediately looking for like new ways to engage and like engage the people that would have been attending the events, and kind of looking for new technologies that would enable them to do that. So yeah, we managed to do I've managed to do some really, really cool things over the past couple of months with like several of my clients. Like, for example, one of my clients is ABA Festival, which is normally takes place across Belfast and London each year. So what we did with those guys, we usually run a really solid partnership with Boiler Room. So we worked with those guys to basically recurate like an online weekend of coverage, which was a bunch of live streams on the Friday, where we got a bunch of the DJs who were on the lineup to just record themselves in their houses and put that out live. And then the next day we recycled like a bunch of the old like historic sets that were, you know, that did super well the first time round. So like with Bicep and like a few of the local artists there. Yeah, so people have, you know, generally been looking for like new ways to engage people and kind of make sure that their audience is still following the brand, making sure that they're still engaged through social media, and that they're still you know, wanting to participate and ready for when the actual live event is ready to come back. Yeah, I think there's been like a lot of new opportunities coming up in terms of events going online. But I think, like I mentioned just before this panel, I think one of the biggest challenges and one of the things that I see most of my clients worrying about is actually how to monetize the event. So whereas before, obviously, they would be making cash from ticket sales, from sponsors, partners, all that kind of stuff. You know, people are much less willing to pay fork out a bunch of cash for an event that they attend online. So how do our clients best kind of monetize that to make people see the value in the ticket? And I suppose it's kind of like what Rachel was saying before about crack supporters and that kind of stuff. Like, how do we come up with these new and inventive ideas of like still delivering the product that we once had, but doing it in like a new and a different way that people see value in? So yeah, I think that's kind of like the biggest takeaway that I've had from this.
Yeah, I totally hear you. I think I've been having a lot of those kind of conversations, not just in music, but in, you know, theatre and stuff, where people are worried that they've started off by offering free streams. So then if people expect that to be the case going forward, then how do artists make money? And I think it is, you know, a worry and something that we should all, you know, keep thinking about going forwards for sure. I'm just going to come to Kitty now, and I wanted to just ask you the same question about whether you know, people you worked with have embraced the innovation or been a bit nervous.
I think it has varied. A lot of the artists that I work with, the ones that have the luxury of being able to move release schedules, certainly saw it as an opportunity to kind of push dates back and really lay low. I've noticed that particularly in early lockdown, it seemed to be only the sort of bigger artists that were releasing music, and for a lot of emerging artists, it seemed like people were a bit reticent to release music, and I think that's partly just because the landscape changed and they weren't quite ready to embrace that innovation or pivot to the kind of opportunities that were available to them. For the events that I work with, most of them have kept to some sort of digital tribute, I suppose, to the festival. So on the weekend that they were meant to be taking place, they did a series of streams. Again, as Dresden said, it was very tricky to monetize, and so it was more a kind of like keeping the brand connected with fans, and kind of paying tribute to the weekend that the festival should have been, as opposed to a kind of viable alternative. And then, like I was saying before, with my work with YouTube, I've seen, I guess, the flip of that, which is lots of people are embracing innovation and new opportunities. I think, in the beginning, it was the kind of living room Instagram live that was, at times a bit kind of haphazardly executed, though I personally really liked the kind of DIY feel. A lot of publications like Clash Magazine and Notion and DIY, they all were doing their own kind of Instagram live series, and as lockdown progressed, they did start to get more innovative. So I remember watching one that was the lead singer from Spectre. He was reading chapters of Harry Potter on DIY, so on their Instagram. So I did see a lot of kind of artists embracing that, and I think the artists that could be seen to have done well out of the situation are the ones that not necessarily embraced opportunities within the media, but kind of created their own narrative. So a couple of examples were Soccer Mummy went on like the world's first 8-bit tour, and I saw that was covered in places like Pitchfork and Rolling Stone. You had other artists like Juliet Jackson from the Big Moon. She started offering Zoom guitar lessons. I think there was a French rapper called Lorenzo who did a tour of Animal Crossing, the Nintendo Switch game. So people were getting really creative. They were seeing that people were flocking to Animal Crossing as a kind of safe space in the troubled times, and were really making the most of that, and they were the ones that I certainly saw were getting the most kind of coverage and exposure from that.
Thanks, Kitty, and that really brings me on to my next question really nicely, actually, because obviously you've all talked about your own platforms and what you've been doing, and Kitty's just given a few examples of other places that she's really enjoyed and followed along. And for me personally, it's definitely been a case of staying connected, as somebody else was saying earlier, and especially if you're isolated or if you're shielding, just having that connection has been really, really important. And I wonder if I could ask the panel generally if there's any other examples from other publications that really impressed you. Fiona, do you want to go?
Well, I mean, I am kind of old school, I've got to admit. So I like a print magazine. So I've been going back to some print magazines, but online stuff. I was quite encouraged actually that there's a new online magazine with an all-female lineup of journalists called The 45, and it's been set up by Charlotte Gunn, the former editor of NME, and I think possibly when she designed her position at the NME at the beginning of the year, I don't think she maybe realised the storm that was going to be unleashed in terms of the and what it meant for the media and for music. But I love the fact that it's not deterred her, and she's just gone straight ahead and put together this sort of high quality portal for high quality writing. But I have to say, on the other side of the fence, there was a little story about a fanzine called Pint Sized Punk, which has been put together by a 10-year-old from Bristol. He's already on issue 2, and he's interviewed people like James Dean Bradfield of the Manic Street Preachers. I think apparently it's available from Cousin Norman's at Chippenham. So I really like the totally lo-fi, like a totally lo-fi element of people caring more about local. I think that was one of the things, obviously, that came out of the pandemic, that people cared about stuff locally as well, and that they were prepared to support this. I've enjoyed the Rolling Stone in my room. So I know that there's, we've talked, Duan and I have talked about the versions that our publications have done of lockdown sessions, and obviously Rolling Stone magazine can, let's just say they can attract perhaps a slightly more famous caliber of musician than the Scotsman can. So the series is called In My Room, and they began with a musician who wrote the song In My Room, Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. But I really enjoyed that, and the Royal Albert Hall concerts as well. I loved the Rufus Wainwright concert was really beautiful. I really wanted, a bit like where we're talking, it's already been mentioned, that idea about looking at window into people's houses and how intimate that is. And I have to admit, I was quite nosy to see what his house in Laurel Canyon would look like, and it was really nicely filmed for him by his husband. And then a couple of weeks later, I watched Baxter Dury at the Royal Albert Hall at home series of concerts, and it was like a really badly framed like concert with him and his son, and him kind of, there's a certain awkwardness at the performance, but there was something quite disarming about it. So I suppose those are the examples I've had to look at. I think there's so much out there that I think your brain would melt if you tried to kind of take in too much. I guess, but I suppose the thing is, there's a lot of stuff out there, so I guess you'll find what it is you like and support that, I would say.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. I have to check out that fanzine you mentioned. That sounds really cool. Does anyone else have any examples that they want to chip in with?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things that spring to mind here. One of the things was there was, I think it was about 47 Irish women did a version of Dreams, the Cranberry song, and they did it to raise money for women who are in domestic abuse distress situations. And it was one of those things that was put together by a lady, Ruth Ann Cunningham, who's written songs for the likes of Britney Spears, but it had Imelda May, it had Sinead O'Connor, it had huge numbers of people involved. And it was one of those things that, it got to number 1 on the charts. It got, took over a space and showed that you could actually make a real and tangible difference with something, even within the confines of what the lockdown gave us. I also just want to say, really, everyone who has kept doing things deserves praise, because it has been a really challenging time for people in the media space. I have 2 daughters, and at the start of the lockdown, Oliver Jeffers would do an Instagram reading every night, and then it went to everything, and then he'd done all his books, and he didn't know what to do after that, so he kind of stopped it. Whereas people in the media and in this space that tend to go, they've kept on doing things, and they haven't just opted out and gone, okay, we just need to let this all go away and come back in February. They've kept on trying to do new things. And then finally, the other people I'd like to sort of doff a cap to is there's a concert going on Saturday. I say concert, a collection of streams in venues around Ireland, and they will be in the live venue. But they won't obviously have an audience, and they are about raising funding and that for the crew and the technical people, the stage hands, the lighting guys, the sound technicians, all these people who literally have had basically a year's worth of work taken away from them. And that's, artists are going to be doing that because they want the wider public, it's going to be broadcast on national television. They want the wider public to understand that these are the people that make things happen, and we want them to still be here when we get back towards normal and still be able to make things happen again.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. It's been really heartening to see how different parts of the industry have been helping each other out. We're all kind of in this together, and it's been really, really positive to see examples of that. Just to talk a little bit about the negative for just a second. Obviously, we've talked about how there's challenges and there's a lot of worries around, and with the landscape generally just changing post-pandemic, and with publications closing, as we've seen with Q, and with publications tightening budgets, there's a worry potentially that there'll be even less space for voices of diverse backgrounds. And I wonder if anyone had any comments or thoughts on that. Rachel, we'll go with you.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid worry, and I think that's something that's weighing on a lot of people's minds. But I also think that the publications that are in operation and the editors who are still working have an even bigger responsibility to make their, the people they hire be diverse, and the voices they include in their magazines to be diverse. I think with everything that's happened this year, it would be incredibly irresponsible to kind of shake off that responsibility as an editor. And I think that, it's the industry that we're in is very locked off, it feels like, for a lot of people from diverse backgrounds, for women. And I think now more than ever, there's a duty of care that needs to be done, basically. And, that should have been this way the whole time. But I think, kind of going through what we've gone through this year, if publications aren't opening their doors to people of diverse backgrounds, then they're actively avoiding doing that.
Yeah, really well said, Rachel. That's totally true. And also the other thing that has kind of been worrying me a lot is that, as we said, with publications tightening budgets, etc., I'm worried that we'll return to that kind of attitude where it's okay to write for free, and publications will, maybe take advantage. I hope they wouldn't, but there is that very real worry that people would take advantage of the fact that everyone just wants to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of sad that has been kind of the mentality that a lot of people have reverted to. It's something I've experienced myself, working as an editor. People just being keen to kind of keep honing their skills and kind of stay present, because obviously we work in an industry that, visibility is very important as a journalist. And, people have offered to write for crack for free. And, obviously we've said no. We're still paying writers. We're, not publishing as often or commissioning as much as usual. But that's also something that I've noticed that, writers are kind of expecting, which means that, the bar is so low for our industry, really, and we need to do better.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a collaborative effort. Everyone needs to kind of take a stand and not accept that we'll go backwards, basically. I'm just going to come to you, Dresden. I wanted to ask more generally about, companies and platforms that do have money. Why do you think that they should support the media if they can?
I mean, I think like at the moment, like, to use the term that Rachel used, I think at the moment we do have like a really, really big duty of care to each other, and I think that those organisations that are in a more privileged position to, with more disposable resources or income, should definitely have a responsibility to create opportunities for those maybe in a worse off situation right now. I mean, if we just look across the industry, we can see like a lot of freelancers losing work, a lot of writers losing work, a lot of the smaller independent people that are really struggling right now. And I would really like to think that organisations with some more resources would like to kind of use the power that they have to create opportunities for those people that are struggling a bit.
Yeah, so it's kind of a case of cross collaboration in a way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like definitely within my work, like I have seen a lot of people being more open to collaborations at the moment, like being more open to, I suppose it is this whole idea of having more time. Like I've definitely seen a lot more like publications and like venues, festivals, etc., being open to like have discussions about collaborations, partnerships, in-kind exchanges where there's not money available and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I think that these kind of conversations need to keep happening so that people can still find ways to work together where, you know, the sort of normal pool of resources aren't there. But yeah, definitely do think that it's really important that, you know, those that are in a better position than others are like looking for ways to actively create opportunities.
Yeah. And Kitty, in terms of artists and managers and labels or even festivals, I wonder what you think they can do to help the media. So, for example, if they're covered, do you think it's really important that they should highlight and promote that?
Yeah, for sure. I think you know, they are all part of the ecosystem, and you know, in the example of a festival that I work with, Melt in Germany, they actually launched a campaign on their Instagram called "Support Your Local Creatives," and you know, they I was asking publications here to kind of partner up, and whether they do like an interview series or what have you, and just kind of keep the audience and directing people to their site. I think is a really important thing to do. I mean, for sure, I think if artists are being covered, then it's quite important that they, you know, share that with their fans. And I know that in the past, you know, certain people like publications have insisted that they, you know, artists share posts that they've put together, and I think that's completely fair enough. And you know, when times are kind of better and you know, everyone can kind of go back to some sort of normality, then I think that yeah, these sorts of collaborations should absolutely continue, and now is the good, like, perfect time to be forming them, really.
Yeah, and from like an editor's perspective, I've found that I've had a lot more artists surprisingly get in touch with me about coverage than ever before. And so Fiona, Duan, and Rachel, I wonder if you've had the same. Do you find that there's just been way more pitches than usual because people have had time, I guess, to work on things?
Yeah, I think people have been quite proactive about getting in touch. I mean, I guess I thought that throughout this, I'd maybe be hearing less from people. I thought everyone would just be kind of hiding under a rock, and that hasn't happened. So yeah, I think there's more of an approach in that respect. You know, there's still a limit to what we can offer people, but I think that you know, it's been great to hear even more new music. I mean, I think as a journalist, you're in a very privileged position anyway, because it kind of comes to you. And I've never kind of taken that for granted, and even more so now that I appreciate that more so than ever now. I just wish we had the budget to run more of these things and to include more people. But I suppose the idea is that we'd like it almost to be a badge of honour. I mean, like I say, hopefully this will carry on. The Scotsman sessions will hopefully carry on for a good bit longer. My editor did, you know, the arts editor, Roger, whose idea it was, I think like a lot of people, he just presumed we'd only be doing this for a short period of time and then we'd be back to normal. And then he gradually realised that we were going to be, this is going to be, you know, this was for the long term. And at one point he said to me, do you think we'll run out of people we can ask? And I just like, there is no way we're going to run out of people we can ask. There are so many brilliant artists, and like I say, the massive long wish list of people that we'd love to have in our sessions. So yeah, but it's good when people get in touch with you, because it just kind of, you know, otherwise there would be a danger that it would just be people that I was interested in. So it's good to get a little reminder from other people, you know, here I am, this is what I'm doing, I exist. And sometimes we've followed up a few contacts in that way as well.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. Yeah, I totally agree with you there. Duan and Rachel, have you had similar experiences?
Yeah, I suppose one of the things that we found is that we've worked hard at sort of, like what's been talked about a lot more sort of collaborative work with artists, doing more with things rather than, you know, again, previous times might be a function of timelines and quite how strict things were, that there was a very, a sort of relatively narrow sphere of stuff you'd be able to do with people, whereas we've spent quite a bit of time when we're working on either cover stories or on digital set pieces on creating a greater environment in which things happen, and doing more and getting past where we might traditionally have stopped in terms of what we did with people.
Yeah, completely. And Rachel, have you got anything to add finally?
Yeah, we've also kind of touching on what Duan just said, we have had way more kind of collaborative processes with artists, and we're not so bound by kind of promo schedules and stuff like that. We've been able to kind of have direct lines with artists that we wouldn't have had before because of perhaps busy tour schedules or busy promo schedules. So for example, we had an Instagram live in conversation with Mel C and Rina Sawayama, which I doubt that if we weren't in lockdown, I'm not sure Mel C would have time to sit down in her lounge and speak to an emerging pop star. And we've also, in terms of the visuals, we've also had to kind of change our approach because we can't be in studios, we can't be shooting people in real life. So outside of the 3D renders and the clay animation work we've been doing, we've also invited artists to kind of shoot themselves and kind of express themselves in that kind of way for editorial, which is not usually the case with magazines. You kind of, arrange a shoot, and of course on set it's collaborative between the artist and the creative team, but now it's more in the hands of the artists, which has been quite interesting. And the results it yields is unexpected every time. Which is really nice compared to, kind of knowing that something's going to come out looking like a professional photo shoot.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree with you there, and I found that myself, just the ability to collaborate with artists in ways that we never really have before has been really cool, and it's something that I hope does continue. I know obviously they have time now, so that's why they can do it, but I really do hope that in the future that they do continue to collaborate with publications. We've only got 7 minutes left. So I'm going to just go around and ask a final question that I want all the panel to answer if possible. And it's, if there was one major thing that you'd hope to see changed in the media and the music landscape post-pandemic, what would it be? And I think I might just start by saying my thing, which is I really hope that more publications and companies will offer remote work. So outside of London, we were talking earlier about opportunities for more diverse voices. I think that could really help with that, and we've seen in the past few months that it can be done. So I really hope that there's a commitment across the board to offer more work like that. Kitty, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I would like to see changed is people paying for content again. Whether that's listening to music or in this case, just supporting the publications that they love that might not, charge a fee. I think The Guardian announcing that they were going to close down I think it was Travel and Review and The Weekend and the Guide supplements, was a huge shock, and many people were left really sad about it, especially The Guide. It feels like one of the last kind of places in the national media where you can kind of have that sort of whimsical left field music content, but all the people that are sort of lamenting the loss are arguably the people that just read the articles online and don't subscribe and don't buy the paper. So yeah, I think reinstating kind of high quality journalism and doing that through people just paying for content again.
Thanks for that, Kitty. And Dresden, we'll go to you next.
I think from my side, the thing that I would like to see continue the most is just kind of this feeling, a heightened feeling of support and collaboration within the industry. I think in comparison to probably this time a year ago, a lot more people are kind of rallying together to support each other. work for each other, look for new opportunities for each other than before. So yeah, that's something I would really like to see continue, like what Rachel mentioned earlier about things like Crack Magazine supporters, and also like NTS Radio have launched like a supporter scheme, all that kind of stuff where, you know, people are now actually, like, for example, I think people that I know are much more willing to put their hands in their pocket to support things that they consume and enjoy at the moment. So I would like to see that become like a more permanent thing, for sure.
Thanks, Dresden. That's great. And how about June?
Yeah, I kind of echo some of the similar things. I mean, particularly what Kitty said. And I think one of the things that I think does need to be is there's spaces in the industry where people are spending quite a lot of money on promoting social posts, and yet going, oh, we won't pay for anything in media. And I think at that moment in time, if you're spending money on Facebook ads, on Instagram ads, on Twitter ads, you should think, okay, do I want other media to be there apart from these platforms? And if I do, I should be finding part of that budget to spend on them.
Thanks for that. We've got 3 minutes left, so Fiona will go next.
Well, I'll be quite quick because I have to echo what the others have said. My feeling was the same. It's the idea of creating a sort of sense of ownership, but by people being prepared to put their money, their hand in, you know, money on the table, hand in their pocket for good quality content. This would also apply for musicians as well, so people to pay for their work. Yeah, so I guess that's what I'd be looking for. But of course, it's tricky because at the moment a lot of people are struggling financially. So that's the conundrum, unfortunately. But I hope as we move forward and as we move through this, that people will understand that you have to use it or you lose it.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. And Rachel?
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone said. I think personally something I'd like to see is the music coverage not being so Anglo-centric. I think this time has shown us how connected we are with each other and how good a tool the internet is. And I'd really like to see, you know, US and UK publications, or kind of like Western publications, pick up artists that aren't just within their orbit. That's something I've been trying to do just because I'm South American. But, you know, there's so much music out there, and I feel like, you know, during this period, a lot of people have been kind of in a more exploratory mood, including editorial teams and publications. And that's something I hope continues because, you know, the world just isn't LA and New York and London, you know.
Yeah. Great words to finish on, Rachel. I totally agree with you there. So we're at the end of the panel now. A massive, massive thank you to the wonderful panelists.